When I got up this morning, I did everything but work. Like, I made some more of these pine candles that I have a video up on my account showing how I made those. But I did that. I love using these for meditation. Really helps bring my focus onto the smells around me. I made 2 gallons of tea and just meal prepped, all because I didn't want to sit down at my computer, which I've been doing for the past 2 hours. Because I eventually managed to do it and work on my taxes because it's freaking boring. But in order to, this video is not about that. This video is about how I overcame it and the method I would recommend. So I just had this like huge mental block about actually sitting down at my computer and starting on work. So I looked at my to-do list and I'm like, okay, what on here is a work-related activity that I enjoy doing the most? And for me, that is CAD, computer aided design. I was just doing some engineering stuff for manufacturing and design for that. And I absolutely love doing that. And I sat down, I started doing it. It took me about an hour to finish the 2 designs I had to do, but it got me into work mode. And I was able to then transfer from doing design over to doing taxes. And I found it a lot easier to do versus trying to sit down and just get into doing taxes. Granted, most of this, if not all of this, is just due to the underlying resistance that I have and the assumption that I don't want to do taxes or that it's difficult to sit down and do taxes. I think that's the overwhelming thing that I'm fighting against. Cat right there. Isn't that it's actually difficult to do taxes, but I thought it would be difficult to make myself sit down to do taxes. So I had to come up with this weird workaround in order to get around that belief. But I don't know. If you ever overcome procrastination or just what's the word I'm looking for? Resistant, like task starting resistance, like resistance to do the work you know you should do. Like a lot of it's mental. Like once you sit down and actually just start doing the task, after 5 or 7 minutes, it's actually just easy and you don't have any more resistance to doing it. But it's just that it's in the initial bit of starting and completing that. And I'm reflecting on it right now. I'm like, holy crap. I believe that I'd have so much resistance to sitting down and just filing my taxes because I thought it would be unbearably boring, that I then had to trick myself into doing it by doing an hour's worth of work on a completely unrelated topic just so that I would sit down at my computer. All because I couldn't just face the underlying belief that it's not difficult to sit down and it only requires at most 5 to 10 minutes of pushing through the initial resistance before you kind of just are like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. That's interesting. It's like trying to overcome the initial resistance of going into cold water by first running around a lot, working out until you reach the point where you want to jump in cold water. And it's like, well, why did you have to do that? It's because you initially told yourself that it's going to be difficult to go into the cold water. So you then had to create a workaround in order to fit the initial story you told yourself. That's not how I saw this video going, but definitely true. Yeah, hopefully you follow, but basically challenge the initial assumption you had, because initially this video is like, oh, check this out. It's a cool way to work around something. Like if you have resistance to doing work or to starting a certain task, you can overcome part of that resistance by doing a similar task at like a similar location to where you're gonna do that other task. And then once you get into like work mode, transfer over into it. And now it's turned into challenge that initial assumption of why you think it's going to be difficult in the first place and just sit down and do it, because the story you're telling yourself that it's going to be difficult is what's making it difficult. So if you simply realize that you have the power to rewrite the story you're telling yourself in your mind, kind of like a video I made earlier about like saying yes to homework. I think that's what I titled the video, but it's basically talking about, I mean, you have to do homework anyways, so why not look at it as, yay, I get to do this. I mean, it's weird, but like you can either do it and hate it, or you can do it and be like, I'm learning. And you kind of get to decide what attitude you have towards it. It's the same with when I was sick. A week ago, I got really sick, but I was lying there. It was difficult at some points, but I was basically lying there with the conscious thought of, I can decide to be miserable right now, or I can try to be happy. It was difficult. It took a lot of my energy just to decide to try to be happy. And I didn't always succeed at doing it, but I still tried because I realized, well, I can try to be happy and be sick, or I can try to be sad and be sick. And I was kind of thinking, like, you kind of have a choice in the matter. I mean, you can be sick, whether or not you're sick, I don't know if you have that much of a choice in, but whether or not you're happy and sick or sad and sick. I mean, if you're sick and someone comes up to you and you're like, hey, you just won $1 million, you're going to be pretty damn happy and sick. So, right there, you can be happy and sick at the same time. They don't necessarily cancel each other out. And I was trying to put myself into that mental state of not having negative self-talk while I was sick, and trying to focus on more positives. And a lot of that was doing breath work and bringing myself into the moment, focusing on smells when I actually could smell, or the feeling of my heated blanket. But good difficult. At one point in time, I had like 15 blankets on me and my heated blanket on max, and I was just wrapped up in it while freezing, and just wondering, I should have taken my temperature. I was just wondering, how can I possibly not be baking myself alive? Because I still felt cold, but I literally had a heated blanket on with 12 to 15 blankets on top of me, and I still felt cold. And I had this for like 4 hours, and I never felt warm once. Probably should have taken my temperature, but anyways, I'm all better now. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the same message I said earlier, where you can decide to be happy, or you can decide not to be happy. You can decide whether or not you want to, you can decide how much resistance you want to have when it comes to doing the task you're going to make yourself do. I mean, you're going to do it anyways, but you can decide whether you don't want to jump in and just get it done with, or do a bunch of chores and then look at your to-do list, pick out a task that is at least at the computer, and then make yourself do that task so that you can then transition over into a different task.